Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 618 for the 16th of August 2020. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. Ooh, the sun's not even up yet. I can't tell if I think it's going to be a clear day. Coming up on this week's show, seeds, mysterious seeds in mysterious packets from China. Is it an urban myth? Is it really happening? What do people do if they get these seeds? Find out when Michelle Franklin looks at this very weird and strange topic. Have you recently received a packet of seeds from China? You didn't order them, you know nothing about them, yet they arrive. Are they seeds of distress? Find out with Michelle Franklin. Following that, we have skeptical news from the Australian Skeptics via the newsletter. Then it's Michelle Bickersma with logical fallacies. This week, Michelle looks at the Texas Sharpshooter fallacy. That's an interesting name for a fallacy. Hope you're doing okay there in Melbourne, Michelle. Melbourne is still in the midst of a very strong, a very stringent lockdown regime to try and, I don't have to tell you why. Then to round off the show, we have a couple of items from the pages of the Skeptic magazine, going back some biblical shenanigans at Sydney's Town Hall. Then we have another article by the late, great Barry Williams, discussing what would the world be like if homeopathy was true, or should I say if it worked as claimed. Now, we often say in the Skeptics, the game we play, the thought experiment is, what's your claim? Your claim is what? Well, what if it were true? What would the world look like? And you can apply that to talking to the dead, or what if it were true if people could really find water using water divining, or they could really bend metals with psychic powers, and so on. It's a very interesting thought experiment, but find out more later on when we read some of those items. Now, don't forget, before we get on to the show, don't forget that on the 23rd to the 25th of October this year, the Australian Skeptics National Convention, Skepticon 2020, is online. You can sit back in your lounge room, in your dressing gown, in your pajamas, anywhere around the world and join us for this year's convention. Lots of interesting speakers lined up and some fun and games along the way. Look, head to www.skepticon.org.au with links in this week's show notes as ever, and find out more about the speakers and the events coming up. And being online rather than in a physical location means you save on travel, you save on accommodation, and this is reflected in the ticket prices, which are also very cheap. So regardless of it being online or in real life, is that how I can say it? Or in face-to-face time? Oh, these days are so confusing. Join us. Please join us for Skepticon. Get your tickets today at skepticon.org.au. Yes, it is a bit of a strange time we're still living through, and we'll be living through for a while yet, I guess, which makes me think how we will be when we come out of all this. Now, I intend to be fitter, thinner. Yeah, fitter and thinner. I hope that maybe you too are putting a positive angle on this. So what do you think that you will be post-COVID? Will you be happier, healthier? Will you make an effort to do something, to learn a new skill set? Online education? I guess what I'm saying is we all should try to make the best of a bad situation. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and have the very last piece of peanut butter toast I'm going to have for a while, because I've decided, with the recommendation from the specialist, to cut my cholesterol down a little. They looked at my chart and they said, oh, your cholesterol is a little high. Not very much. So no more peanut butter toast for me for a while, so I'm going to enjoy this last one while I do that. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Life is wild. With Michelle Franklin.
Hi guys, this is Michelle Franklin reporting from the Northern Territory. Today I want to talk about something that I saw on the internet. Back in July, I saw this little story on Facebook about someone in America who claimed to have received a package of seeds from China in the mail. They said they didn't order anything, and this little package that was labelled as earrings, but actually contained lemon seeds, just showed up at their house one day. The story was about how the US Department of Agriculture was asking that anyone who receives a package like this to contact them immediately and dispose of it safely. My first thought was that it's some silly mistake. Someone's ordered some seeds online and the package has been mislabelled and sent to the wrong person. Happens all the time, but I read the comments. So many people were laughing at how stupid the authorities are for worrying about lemon seeds. And of course this bothered me because they had no regard for the possibility of pests or pathogens on those seeds, and they all seemed extremely confident that they were in fact lemon seeds. It reminded me of those people on Facebook who comment on the snake ID posts. You know, the ones where there's a brown coloured snake and they assume that they're experts and declare that that's certainly a king brown. Or worse, the ones who see the tiniest hint of a pattern and declare that it must be a harmless carpet snake, seeming naive to the fact that there are any other snakes in the world besides king brown and carpet. Anyway, I didn't think too much about this post other than to feel a bit annoyed at overconfident amateurs educating one another and spreading their own misplaced confidence around. Then one day last week I woke up and checked Facebook again and found a follow-up story. And this time I actually read the article. It claimed that an Arkansas man had received a mysterious package from China containing unknown seeds, and out of curiosity he planted one and looked after it. Of course this is stupid, he shouldn't have done that, but I wasn't surprised. People are curious and he was just trying to learn more, and he didn't understand the risks. But the story became quite sensational after that. It claimed that the mystery seeds had grown into a massive unstoppable fruit, and it's still unknown what exactly the plant is. Although it's producing large white fruit and orange flowers, and it says that authorities are coming to remove the plant and do further tests. Of course, any decent botanist will be able to identify the plant with no problems, but like any expert, of course, they're not going to do it over the phone or from a photo. They're going to want to have a look at it properly before making a statement. So the mystery plant is likely no more of a mystery than the brown-coloured snake. It just hasn't been looked at by the right person yet. Now, at this point, my overactive skepticism's still thinking that it's a dumb fluff piece about an old man and his pumpkin and it's no big deal. But I watched the video and it appears that this is actually happening in the US on a larger scale than I was assuming, and in other countries as well. Further Googling led me to articles of similar packages from China, Malaysia and Taiwan showing up in multiple countries, including Australia. I went to the USDA website, and right there on their front page, right above the COVID-19 banner, was a link regarding unsolicited packages of seeds from China. It's not there today when I just checked, but a week ago it was there. That made me pay attention, so I clicked the link, and from there I learned that there's currently a joint investigation underway involving multiple state and federal departments, including the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service and the Department of Homeland Security's Custom and Border Protection. I guess they were taking it seriously, so that's good. According to the USDA, at this stage they have no evidence that it's anything other than a brushing scam, and I had to Google brushing. Apparently this is where online sellers send unsolicited packages to random consumers and then post false reviews to boost their sales ratings. Of course, if this is a brushing scam, it seems odd that they'd pick seeds to send. It's an odd choice, but I guess they're small and lightweight and probably fairly cheap to acquire. What I mainly wanted to talk about on this topic, though, isn't the actual risk of the seeds. If you've listened to my story a while back about Johnny Depp and his infamous dogs, then you'll already know that biosecurity across borders is a big deal. And in this new age of COVID-19, I'm hoping that more people will understand the reasoning for that. What I'm interested in talking about here is the assumed intent of these packages. In the first article that I read back in July, there were comments from people speculating that these seeds were sent by the Chinese government in a deliberate attempt to spread pests and disease in the US. The responses to these comments were rightfully sceptical, pointing out that there would be much more effective ways to do that than package up seeds and label them as jewellery and send them to some random guy in Arkansas. But many of the comments on that original post were adamant that the seeds were lemon seeds, and as lemons are harmless, the whole thing is ridiculous and it should all be dismissed and ignored. Now, to be fair, they probably were lemon seeds. According to the articles that I've read, the packages contain all sorts of common agricultural seeds that are easy to come by. But even if they are just lemons, and even if there really is just a brushing scam, that doesn't mean it's safe. We don't need ill intent or malice to cause harm. Apathy and stupidity are perfectly capable of causing harm on their own. If this is just a brushing scam, do you think the people perpetrating it are concerned about biosecurity? Do you think they're being careful to only send clean, disease-free seeds? Do you think they're doing risk assessments and considering the local ecosystems at the various destinations and making sure that the species of choice has low potential to become an invasive pest in that region? Or even checking to see if there are laws regarding the import of unpermitted plant materials? In this new age of COVID-19, where the general public are starting to understand the need for biosecurity, we're seeing the harm that can be caused by those who don't take it seriously. And very few of them have malicious intent. Stupidity and unearned confidence are sufficient to bring whole nations to the ground in a pandemic, and also sufficient to spread dangerous seeds and cause harm when some guy in China wants to boost his sales rating and some guy in America wants to grow a mystery pumpkin. Neither of them have malicious intent, but also neither of them understand the risks. I'll be keeping an eye out for further developments on this story. Maybe the conspiracy theorists are right and it's all an elaborate hoax to spread disease and misfortune in the world. But until I see evidence of this, I'm applying Hanlon's razor, which states that you should never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity.
Hola, les habla Paula desde la hermosa ciudad de Buenos Aires, en Argentina. Cuando escuchamos podcasts, escuchamos los mismos que escucha todo el mundo, como The Skeptic Zone. Ojalá puedan venir a visitarnos algún día. Los esperamos con nuestras riquísimas comidas locales y hasta podemos ir a bailar un tango. Mientras tanto, sigan disfrutando de su dosis semanal de ciencia y pensamiento racional. ¡Chao!
Now it's time to look once again at the Australian Skeptics newsletter, fresh in my inbox. And this is newsletter number 104. And the first item in the newsletter, Skepticon, early bird tickets available. Early bird tickets for Skepticon 2020, the Australian Skeptics' 36th annual convention, October the 24th to the 25th, are now available at reduced prices for a limited time. The price reflects the fact that this year's event will be all online. Early bird on sale until the 24th of September, with concession tickets at just $30 and general tickets at just $50. The standard ticket price, and this will be after the 24th of December, concession will be $45 and general will be $65. This event will be streamed live on YouTube. We will provide you with details on how to access the live stream via email after you purchase your tickets. The usual awards will be announced via satellite from a glitzy venue, probably Richard Saunders' lounge room. Okay. In the meantime, speakers so far include Dr. Alice Howarth, Dr. Carl Kruzelniski, Michael Foley, Professor Tanya Smith, and many more. The next item says young men are more likely to believe COVID-19 myths. If the media are anything to go by, you'd think people who believe coronavirus myths are white, middle-aged women called Karen. But a new study shows a different picture. University of Sydney researchers found men and people aged 18 to 25 are more likely to believe Corona-19 myths. They also found an increase from people from a non-English speaking background. It looks like Kevin has replaced Karen as the stereotype du jour. Another item says New Zealand psychic delivers vitamins vibrationally. Quite a lengthy item, more than required, but it involves psychic Jeanette Wilson, who the New Zealand Skeptics have been onto, as well as Susan Gerbeck, by the way. She is also a psychic surgeon and promotes anti-vaccination, anti-5G, QAnon beliefs, and recently said a dietary supplement could prevent COVID-19. So you get the idea. Business is booming for New York City psychics. New York's psychics and fortune tellers say they are seeing more clients and making more money than ever before. Quote, when there's a big change in the world, or more uncertainty in the world, that is when people look for more certainty, end quote, psychic Betsy LaFay told the New York Post. Quote, everyone now wants more certainty, and yes, that is when people tend to turn to psychics, end quote. Certainty, psychics, not two words we expected in the same sentence. And there are more items in this newsletter. To subscribe to the Australian Skeptics newsletter yourself and to receive this in your inbox every couple of weeks, just head to www.skeptics.com.au and sign up. Appearing at Skepticon 2020, Professor Tanya Smith. Tanya Smith is a professor in the Australian Research Centre for Human Evolution and the Griffith Centre for Social and Cultural Research at Griffith University. And she is passionate about teeth. Teeth preserve for millions of years remarkably faithful records of daily growth and infant diet, as well as stress experienced during birth. Her aim is to understand fully how teeth grow, why they vary, and how this information can advance the field of human evolutionary biology. Topics she elaborates on in her popular science book, The Tale Teeth Tell, published by MIT Press in 2018. Tanya has previously held a professorship at Harvard University and fellowships at the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study and the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology. Her research has been funded by the Australian Academy of Sciences and the US National Science Foundation and published in Nature, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and Science Advances. Professor Tanya Smith, just one of the speakers appearing at Skepticon 2020, the Australian Skeptics National Convention. For more information and tickets, visit www.skepticon.org.au.
Logical fallacies. What are logical fallacies, and why is it important that critical thinkers should know about them? A logical fallacy is an error we can make in reasoning, but it usually crops up when we are discussing or arguing our point of view. Some people might even knowingly use them to try and score cheap points in an argument due to intellectual laziness. They are traps we can fall into, but if we know what to look out for, we can spot them when they occur and stop ourselves from using them. This time, we'll look at the Texas Sharpshooter fallacy.
Also known as the clustering illusion, this is when you downplay or ignore information that doesn't support your argument or point of view, and focus on information that seems to be more in line with what you want to be true. It is also imposing meaning onto randomness.
This must surely be one of the more interesting names for any logical fallacy. It comes about from the idea that someone would shoot at random at the side of a barn or fence, then paint a target on later around the bullet holes that happen to be close together to make it appear as if the shots were on target.
In 1555, the prophet Nostradamus foresaw the coronavirus plague of 2020. He wrote in Century 2, Quatrain 35, "The great plague of the maritime city will not cease until there be avenged the death of the just blood, condemned for the price without crime, of the great lady unwronged by pretense."
Finding meaning in the quatrains of Nostradamus is an old game. Since he wrote 942 of them, most of them vague and open to interpretation, and even mistranslation from the French used in the 16th century, it's really not that hard to find at least one, or even more, you can make fit events of more recent times or at any time since they were written. Just look for the lines that seem to fit and ignore the ones that don't. Much of this quatrain, the maritime city, the lady unwronged, are ignored. This same quatrain has also been used to claim Nostradamus foresaw the Great Plague of London in 1665. If you'd like to know more, there is an excellent book called The Mask of Nostradamus, written by James Randi.
When tested, the water diviner found 3 bottles of water that were hidden from view, one after the other after the other. Now that's just amazing, and points to water divining being real.
This can and does happen during tests of water divining. But short runs of success are expected when conducting many tests. It also happens in casinos when someone might get lucky on the roulette table 2 or 3 or even 4 times in a row. But overall, we all know the house wins in the end. We need to take all the results into account before we can reach a real conclusion.
It's just so strange that bad things seem to happen to me in 3s. First, I lost my job, then my dog got sick, and now the TV won't work.
Good and bad things happen from time to time, and both can be random. Since many people have already heard the saying, bad things come in 3s, or even famous people die in 3s, and so on, it's all too easy for us to see a pattern after 3 such events. But what if bad things come in 4s or 5s? Looking for things that seem to line up is all very well, but you need to also take into account all the related things or events that don't line up, as they too must be considered in the overall pattern of events before you reach a conclusion. Knowing a logical fallacy when you hear one, and even knowing its name, is important when arguing your point of view. However, you may come across as arrogant and not get very far if you call it out by name to your opponent when you hear it being used. If your opponent calls you out for using one, it's time to stop and think about how you are making your case. Use your knowledge of logical fallacies wisely, and remember that even if your point of view is right and you know all the pitfalls in arguing your case, it doesn't always mean you'll win on the day. And as skeptics, we must also remember that we too can be wrong at times. I'm Michelle Bickersma from the Vic Skeptics. Thanks for listening.
I started listening to Ono, Ross and Carey shortly after I broke my arm, and the doctor had told me I'd never...
Thank you, Ross and Carey.
Ono, Ross and Carey is just a podcast. It doesn't do anything. It's just sounds you listen to in your ears. All these people are made up. Goodbye.
Now it's time to dive once again into the back issues of The Skeptic, the journal from Australian Skeptics. And this time we're going all the way back to 1990, volume 10, number 2. And on page 7 we discover a report by Tim Mendham, the current editor of the Skeptic magazine and one of our reporters here on the Skeptic Zone. Prophecy at Sydney Town Hall. An exhibition entitled Bible Prophecy Display, held at the Sydney Town Hall on April 19th to the 21st, proved an irresistible temptation, especially in the view of the articles in this and previous issues taking a skeptical approach to the same subject. Organised by the Sydney Revival Centre, the displays covered such current items of interest as the greenhouse effect, the fall of the Berlin Wall, pollution and soil erosion, as well as older favourites like the State of Israel, the Russian threat, the British throne as direct descendant of the throne of David, and the Great Pyramid. This latter subject seemed to have little relevance to biblical study, but rather concentrated on how clever the Egyptians were to have built the pyramid in the first place, aligned as it supposedly is with every real or imagined line of longitude and latitude of significance. As this display was based on the now discounted theories of Piazzi Smythe, there seemed little point in including it. Nevertheless, truth and relevance did not seem to be of great concern to the organisers, who obviously preferred simplistic observations and fear tactics as weapons in the war to win converts. One of the silliest displays was the amazing revelation that Australia is mentioned in the Bible. Behold, these shall come from far, and lo, these from the north and west, and these from the land of Terra Australis. Isaiah 49:12. While admitting that Terra Australis is not actually in the English language version, but is rather lifted from the Vulgate Latin of St. Jerome, the organisers see this as further proof of the Bible's inerrancy. The facts that the Old Testament wasn't written in Latin originally, that Australia was first called New Holland by Europeans, and a correct translation of the quote as used in the exhibition would be the meaningless from the land of the south, and that the New International Version of the Bible translates Terra Australis as being the region of Aswan in southern Egypt, and therefore a long way from Australia, seem to have escaped the organisers. Still, a local touch, no matter how nonsensical, always works well with the visitors. Just as silly was the long diatribe, circa 1899, on the numerical coincidences of the Bible. This style of numerological legerdemain has no value at all, being equally easily carried out on any work of length, and even on something as simple as your own name. From the exhibitor's point of view, coincidence, often contrived, equals fact. The meaning of life is 42. Many of the other displays covered in the exhibition referred to prophecies dealt with by Colin Groves et al. In this journal. And just as an aside, if you want to read this journal, of course it's free to download, and there are many very interesting items in this copy, in this issue, about prophecy. We read on. What was most disturbing was an almost gleeful approach as one disaster after another, earthquakes, famine, war, plagues, etc., were listed, all of course indicating the approaching final days. It seemed that the organisers could hardly wait for the end, regardless of the suffering imposed on their fellow humans, not to mention other forms of flora and fauna. The greatest toll from an earthquake in historic times probably took place over 400 years ago in China. The greatest volcanic explosion over 3,000 years ago, and the worst plague was the Black Death of 1347 to 1351. In fact, there is no evidence that natural disasters are increasing or getting worse. It is just that our communications are better and we know about more. This doesn't bother the organisers either, who equate the Newcastle earthquake, small by world disaster standards, with the worst of recorded history. A total lack of historical perspective is evident in every utterance of those espousing a final days scenario. Rather than thoughtful prophecies, these are fear-mongering bogeymen. We may ask, therefore, what value are converts created from fear rather than the love which is supposed to be the basis of Christianity? And again, that report comes to us from the year 1990, written by Tim Mendham in the pages of The Skeptic, and that's volume 10, number 2. Yes, it's great fun to look through all these back issues. You never know what you're going to find. And now we jump to spring of 1991, and this is volume 11, number 3, and an item written by the late great Barry Williams, stalwart of the Australian Skeptics for many years. Paranormal Claims. What if? Skeptics often lament that an in-depth knowledge of science is required to refute the claims made by proponents of extraordinary claims. In some cases, this may well be true. Does the EPR paradox allow for action at a distance, and thus legitimize the claims for psychokinesis? But in general, the majority of claims that we non-scientist skeptics come across can be tested by the application of common sense and the rules of logic. A useful rule of thumb is, If it sounds like crap, it probably is. One method a skeptic can use to test the unlikely truth of a claim, without going to the trouble of setting up controlled double-blind tests, or any of the other rigorous methods used in testing a scientific hypothesis, is to make the assumption that the claim is true. Having made this assumption, we can make logical extrapolations based on it and see how the world that is allowed by our assumption agrees with the world in which we live. This is, of course, not an infallible test. Many quantum claims, for instance, are certainly counterintuitive and sound most peculiar to the lay skeptic, and to not a few scientists too, I suspect. But it is a useful test for many everyday claims. Here we look at the world in which homeopathy is a fact. Homeopathy was the 18th century invention of the German physician Samuel Hahnemann. Its fundamental tenets are that like cures like, and that infinitesimal doses of a substance are therapeutic. That is, that small amounts of a substance which produce similar symptoms to a disease will rally the body's natural defenses to combat the disease. In its time, before we had developed the germ theory of disease, it was not an unreasonable proposition, but it can now be seen as an unscientific proposition, in some ways parallel to immunization. Its failure lay in the fact that it sought to address disease through its symptoms, and not, as is the case with immunization, through its causes. The key to understanding homeopathic nostrums lies in the extreme dilution of the active agent. Homeopathy has it that the more dilute the substance, the more certain the cure. As an example, 1 milliliter of the active agent might be added to 10 liters of distilled water. The resultant mixture is then agitated, and 1 milliliter of this dilute solution is added to a further 10 liters of water, and so on, until the prescribed level of dilution is reached. It is obvious that, after a few dilutions, we reach a stage where it is statistically very improbable that any molecule of the active agent will be found in any dose of the medicine. This is not a problem to the dedicated homeopath, as the cure comes not from the ingredient, but from some energetic memory contained in the water and imprinted therein by the agitation during the dilution process. It is probably superfluous to say that there is not a great deal of evidence for this proposition, nor is there a body of evidence to suggest that homeopathy has a great influence on the eradication of any major disease. However, that is not the purpose of this article. We are considering a world, H-world, in which homeopathy is true. Let me be blunt. A world in which one of the fundamental tenets of homeopathy, the diluter the better, is true, is a world devoid of life. The problem for life lies not in the homeopathically active ingredients, but in the water in which these ingredients are diluted. The water on our planet has been around for a long time, and during that time it has been in contact with every element, every compound, indeed every substance that exists on the earth. The fresh water we drink comes from rain, which comes from evaporation from the oceans. Oceans certainly get agitated, so the memory of everything in them must be imprinted on the water molecules. Storms add a bit more agitation, so does hitting the ground and rushing down rivers and streams. Just consider a few of the substances whose vibrations will be imprinted on inimical to health and well-being, or indeed to life itself. Plutonium, arsenic, radium, hydrogen cyanide, botulinus toxin, cholera bacteria, mercury, carbon monoxide. The list is almost endless and very nasty. No matter what beneficial homeopathic agent was diluted with this water, its benefits would surely be outweighed by the nastiness already imprinted on the water. Traces of these things probably do exist in the water we drink in our mundane world, but at a level that is regarded as safe, and, if we are reasonably careful, they do not cause us any great harm. In H-world, they all exist in every drop of water we drink, or at least the memory of them exists. And the more we try to purify the water, the more certain their inimical effects will be. There can be no safe level at all in this world, unless perhaps it lies in huge doses. In fact, following the homeopathic reasoning, the more of anything one ingests, the less harm it should do. The treatment we use to remove what we, in the non-homeopathic world, regard as the harmful bits only serves to increase their potency in H-world. Conversely, if the other homeopathic tenet, like cures like, is true, we should never get sick at all. For all of the reasons listed above, the ultimately dilute samples existing in our water of every substance that can make us ill should have rendered us immune to everything. Indeed, if the memory of any substance survive, even when none of the substance itself remains, then why should we have need for homeopathic remedies at all? The memory should be retained in the water molecules that make up so much of our bodies. It would appear, then, that the two fundamental beliefs of the homeopath would, if they were true, make for a very strange world indeed. I contend that our world does not at all resemble H-world, and for a homeopath to convince me otherwise, he would require to show much better evidence than currently exists, and he would have to explain why my hypothetical H-world is wrong. And that was Paranormal Claims, What If, written by Barry Williams, way back in 1991. And I think I can answer Barry, after all these years, that if you ask a homeopath, why wouldn't the world be like H-world, the homeopath would answer, well, you see, it doesn't work like that. Which is the same answer we get from all sorts of branches of the paranormal. Why can't you predict the winning lotto numbers next week? Oh, it doesn't work like that. Why can't the dead tell you where they hid the key? Oh, it doesn't work like that. And so on. But what a great resource it is to be able to pour through the pages of The Skeptic, which is soon to be 40 years old. 40 years of articles, interviews, items, reports, examinations at your fingertips at www.skeptics.com.au.
Hey, fellow skeptics,
Ben Radford here,
with Celestia Ward,
your friendly host of Squaring the Strange,
a podcast that looks at topics ranging from legends, panics, and cryptids,
to media myths, psychology, and folklore,
breaking things down and picking things apart.
as we skeptics do.
We bring a few different perspectives on things.
Celestia, for example, is a witty cartoonist.
And Ben is a brilliant writer and longtime skeptical investigator.
We don't always agree,
But we have fun trying.
and we learn new things.
Join us for new topics every week or two.
Or browse our backlog of evergreen episodes.
Available on iTunes and all your podcast feeding troughs.
Squaring the Strange.
Take care, strangers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. In the last few days, my friend Bailey Harris, the young author of the Stardust series of books, let me know that there is a special edition with a foreword by Richard Dawkins, no less. And this is a children's book inspired by what Neil deGrasse Tyson called the most astounding fact. We are literally made of stardust. And Bailey has a Kickstarter to help with this project. And if you're interested in this, please go to this week's show notes at skepticzone.tv and you'll find a link there. Coming up on next week's show, more logical fallacies with Michelle Biggersma down there in Melbourne. Yes, we're thinking about you, Michelle. In the lockdown, the stringent lockdown and all our friends, family members and colleagues down in Melbourne and in Victoria. We look forward to the day when the borders are free again. Also, the strange case of an Australian astronaut on his way to the moon. That's coming up next week. And I should be able to officially announce next week news of our new reporter. But if you're curious, you can go to skepticzone.tv and click the contacts link and you'll see. Oh, if you do happen to go to skepticzone.tv, please click the subscribe link or the Patreon link or the PayPal link and become a sponsor, a supporter of the show. And it's only because of the people just like you who already support the show that you are hearing this right now. Now, normally at this time I'd say something like, until next week, this is Richard Saunders signing off, blah, 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 you know, the story. Well, I'm going to sign off now, but you're not going to get the normal, traditional, much-loved ending to the Skeptic Zone. What you're going to hear now is a recording made by our reporter, Michelle Franklin. She and I teamed up to pull a gag on her daughters. I'll hand it over to Michelle now.
Okay, so we made a deal about going to Science Week. How are you going to win your prize of being allowed to go to Science Week?
I made 3 predictions. If they come true, we're going to Science Week to build a rocket.
A rocket. Is that cool?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you want to listen to the dice game now?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
You've been listening.
Now tell me what your 3 predictions are.
Please visit our website.
They're 4, 6, and 3.
4, 6, and 3. All right.
For show notes,
let's listen
contacts,
and see if we
win. And to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter @Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone
here's
are
your
not
numbers.
necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Hello, all you people who listen after the music. The afterthoughts, the people who keep listening even though the show's gone. Now, if you haven't heard this part of the show before, this is where I roll a die, sometimes 6, sometimes 10, sometimes 30. Today, a 10-sided die, and you use your magic predicting power or dumb luck, good luck, to guess what numbers are going to come up. So, here it is. I've got the die right here. Predict away. What's your first prediction?
What's your first prediction?
4.
Here it comes. And the first number is 4. Here we go. Just write that down.
Is that your number?
Hey.
Pen here.
Yeah, it is.
Right, next number coming up.
Okay, 1 out of 3 so far.
Predict away. The next number is... It's hiding under the 6.
That's it. That's my number.
Is that your number?
Yeah, that's my number.
Did you get 2?
Yeah. I got 2.
1 more and we're going.
Using your psychic powers or whatever. Last number on the die this week is 3.
That's it. That's it. That's my number.
Are you sure?
6.
What does that mean?
3.
Going to Science Week.
How did you go, Holly? How does Science Week sound?
He heard me.
What happened?
He heard?
Did he hear you?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
He heard all the way from Sydney.
What do you think happened?
How did he hear me? What? Have you told anything to him?
Do you think I did?
Did you?
What do you think I did?
Did you tell them that we're going to Science Week and then we're doing the dice game? Wait. Did you tell them to do that?
Trick jar. Was that fun though?
Yeah. Fun.
Do you still want your prize?
Oh! Oh, it's a joke. You know I like jokes.
Yeah, I played a funny joke on Holly. Tell her what I did.
Is it the bug one?
No.
Good.
What bug one?
A bug joke.
What's the bug joke? Oh, the pun that I said.
Yes.
You still don't think that's funny?
No.
Did she tell you the joke?
No, I can't say it.
For context, an entomologist is a person who studies bugs.
Yeah.
Entomology. Etymology is the study of words and language. They're two very similar sounding words. The joke that I said, which is not my joke, but I got it off the internet and I said it, is people who don't know the difference between entomology and etymology bug me in ways that I cannot put into words. She laughed.
I don't think it's funny.
It's so funny.
No, it's not. But how do you not think it's funny? It's just not funny. Is this thing recording?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
It's alright. Holly, tell Riley the joke that I played.
You mean the bug one?
Not the bug one. Tell her what we just did on the dice game.
What's so bad about it?
It's not bad, it's funny. So we were going to play the dice game. Holly made 3 predictions and they all came true.
Because you told him to say them, but he didn't actually get them on the dice. What?
So we played the dice
cheated.
game. Yeah.
She cheated. How rude. But we're still going to Science Week.
But we get to go to Science Week because of it.
If she didn't do this, we wouldn't have gone to Science Week.
Actually, I already signed up for Science Week. We were going to go no matter what.
What? I only recently told Tay about this, so like yesterday.
Yeah,
you told me yesterday.
Are you excited to go, Taylor?
As soon as I told her what we were going to do, she was like super hyped.
I was like jumping up and down. Miss Clark had to tell me to like,
yep.
Stop screaming. I'm like,
but I'm excited. She legit was jumping and nearly fell over.
Oof. Okay, I'm going to edit this into something useful and send it. Is that alright if I use that recording?
Yeah.